The state of the planet is broken. Dear friends, humanity is waging war on nature. This is suicidal. Nature always strikes back, and it is already doing so with growing force and fury. Biodiversity is collapsing, 1 million species are at risk of extinction, ecosystems are disappearing before our eyes, deserts are spreading, wetlands are being lost.
Let's speak to Sven Harmeling. He's the Global Policy Lead on Climate Change at the humanitarian agency CARE International. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, Sven. You know what? Let's just forget the evidence for the moment, okay? We all know it. Anybody who watches a news program sees what's happening to the world. It's very clear. So if we can start with you giving us an appreciation of the most encouraging signs you see of governments that are taking action and the least encouraging signs that you see.
Okay, thank you very much. I think many of the most encouraging signs coming from, let's say, the lower levels of country administrations and from cities, for example. There are many cities out there who have started to implement plans for very ambitious climate targets, both in terms of reducing emissions as well as being better resilient and better adapted to the climate change impacts. We also see many people initiatives in many countries really rising up to the challenge and demanding more climate action. And in recent months, there have been a few governments like New Zealand in the last days, China making new announcements, and the EU with very politically important decisions next week, who at least give us some additional hope or some momentum that we see a step change in the action on climate change. But of course, we also know we have lost many years, so that's why it's even more important to speed up now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are many people who say that actually limiting temperature increase to 2.5 degrees Celsius is not enough, to be zero emissions by 2050 is not enough. And so does it really become a question, rather than one of inaction, more a question of ideology? Because so many governments think that if we force change upon our people now, they will have to sacrifice too much and we will become unpopular as a government. In other words, the worst effects are not being felt right now, but will come in 20 or 30 years. So let's leave it for those generations to sort out.
I mean, that would, of course, be a very irresponsible behavior. I think I can also say that if you talk to people in the streets in many countries, there's already much more direct perception of climate change impacts happening at a severe scale than we've seen 10 years ago. So people feel it today. And I think we should also reject the assumption that ambitious climate action necessarily means disadvantages for the people. And we've seen, I think there's much more openness now to change things. It's, of course, very important to change the basis of our energy systems to go to renewables rather than continuing the subsidies for fossil fuels. But many of the initiatives and actions we need can rely on technologies which are much more advanced today than 10 years ago. And also the shift of the subsidies we're seeing. I mean, as long as governments still put hundreds of billions into fossil fuels, it's very difficult to change the system. So that has to change. But I think people are much more prepared and are much more demanding today to really think about and be part of a transformation towards a cleaner and healthier planet.
This move to make ecocide a crime has been growing for the past few years. How likely do you think it might be that it will be implemented as laws in individual countries, and how much difference could it then make?
Yeah, I'm sure it's not an easy task, and I have to say I'm not the expert on this particular legal question. But what I would like to say is that strategies to involve courts and legal cases against governments, against companies not acting enough or even undermining climate action are definitely an important part of the portfolio today. And you see kids basically going to courts, young people going to courts because they're concerned and rightly concerned about their future and the planet they have to live in if significant action is not taken today and in the next really couple of years. So I think generally it's very important to also look at these legal avenues, and we're fighting for our survival, as the Secretary General said, and there are no means which you should exclude, and these are standard means in other areas. So it's very important to look at these legal questions as well.
Absolutely. Sven, you know what? Of course, I understand that you're not a politician or a legal expert. But then, of course, being an expert in the climate, you have to understand that it affects so many other areas of society and the way we live, that you need to almost be able to analyze those issues. And that's why I'm kind of apologizing to you that we're not actually talking specifically about the climate, but things that affect the climate can make things better. So thanks very much indeed. Sven Harmeling from CARE International.